Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Prince Adu-Appiah here, and I'm excited you're joining this episode. Today, we are heading to the UK to speak with my guests, Megan Preston and Claire Hardy. These are two amazing young women and leaders I have known for a while now. I met them in the year 2015 for a partnership project with 1 Billion Africa in Ghana. And both Megan and Claire are co-founders of the charity called Move the World, a UK-registered charity focused on community development and global citizenship education in Ghana. They support the development of leadership skills and capabilities in young people to enable projects and programs that tackle local community issues. I certainly believe that you are going to get a lot. You're going to be inspired by their stories and their leadership lessons today. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. This is your big leadership lesson. Megan and Claire, I must tell you, I'm super excited about this. I didn't have to think twice to get you both, on board this pilot season of your big leadership lesson, which is beginning with young global leaders from across the world, and I have so much respect for you both. I think we first met somewhere in 2015 during one Billion Community Day at Medie. And look, your work in the media community in Ghana, your devotion, as I've seen over the years, towards creating change is absolutely inspiring. And so I'm super excited to have you on the show. Thanks for being on the show, guys. Thanks. So to start with, I'd like to start with you, Megan. Kindly give us a bit of background of your leadership story, before we jump on to Claire.
Okay, cool. Thanks for having us, Prince. Your work is also equally as inspiring, if not more so. So thanks for having us. My leadership journey, I would probably say I was quite lucky kind of with the way in which I was brought up. I was brought up in a family where my dad was quite successful in business. And so from quite an early age, there was talk about kind of leadership and what that meant, I guess, for him and his kind of business environment. But also he talked to us quite a lot as kids about kind of the role of leadership and what leadership looked like. So if I think about where my leadership journey started, I think back to like being in primary school and being the house captain, like aged 11, and like looking after kind of, PE lessons and like organizing games for PE. And then in high school, that kind of moved into more kind of art focused work. So like the dance team and that kind of stuff. So my kind of early experiences with leadership were definitely in school. And I felt really supported in that, by my peers and by my teachers. And then I decided to become a professional dancer. So I went to ballet school when I was 16 years old. And probably my kind of leadership experience kind of took a bit of a stall during that point because I was just working on becoming a dancer and like really honing in on technical kind of skill development. But once I was in the kind of world of professional dance, that's probably where I grew the most in terms of my leadership development. So I became really aware that the dance community, particularly in London, was very unsupported, and a lot of my kind of peers in the dance industry just didn't feel like they had access to the right education, the right kind of psychological support, the right kind of networking in terms of helping them develop professionally. And I really felt like I could help in that area. And so that's really where I kind of probably did my first kind of entrepreneurial kind of putting my stake in the ground, saying I can lead in this area. And I look back on it now and I'm like, gosh, there's things that I did then that were super courageous I probably wouldn't be able to do now because I kind of maybe am a bit more risk averse. And at the same time, there's things that I did that probably really stupid that I definitely wouldn't do now because I've learned better. So it's kind of catch-22. I feel like sometimes I wish I had that energy and that kind of go-getter attitude that I had 10 years ago. And I also know I'm a wiser kind of leader, I guess, in terms of the way in which I work now. So I worked and ran a lot of different programs and initiatives in the dance industry for 5-6 years in London. And that was also when we started Awareness Through Dance and kind of led a group of dancers up Kilimanjaro to raise money for charity. And then that kind of evolved into leading trips to Ghana, which is obviously where we met you. Yeah, that was definitely kind of a laboratory for leadership, those kind of 5 years or so. And then the last 5 years, I have shifted out of the dance industry. So I joined my dad and started working with him in a consultancy, management consultancy that we started, which ironically is focused on leadership development. So actually the last 5 years, I've been spending a lot of time looking at what leadership actually is, and working with executives in different companies around the world on their leadership. So kind of honing in much more on kind of the topic of leadership. And in doing that, it's definitely made me reflect on my own leadership style, really look at kind of my own personal skills, strengths, weaknesses, all of that stuff. And then, as I said, I think that has meant that I've become a kind of wiser leader in the way in which I work now. Hopefully more effective, but yeah, it's been a journey. And Claire and I, run Move the World together, have done for 5 years. And I think, the story of like the way in which we've worked together has shifted and evolved. And I feel like we're in a really good kind of balance about how we lead the organization now. And the work that we're doing, I think, has benefited from us really kind of thinking about how we lead the organization. And it's hard because, we're running work that isn't in our country. So it's kind of how much leadership and control is like this constant balance I find in terms of having ideas, inspiring others, but then also like empowering others to just make it happen and not feeling like you have to kind of manage every single detail, because it needs to be kind of there also needs to be kind of leadership taken from other people to make things happen. Yeah, that's a bit of my journey.
Wow, that is interesting. And a friend of mine said rightly that we're not doing it because it's easy. We are doing it because it's hard. And like you said, it's difficult work. I particularly love the part of your story where you said, whilst you were at the dance school with those groups, you realize that they lack this, they lack that, they lack that, and that was when the leader within you emerged, and that is how leaders come up. Brilliant. I love it. I love your story. I know it will inspire someone out there. Let's go to Claire. So Claire, I'm dying to know your story. I'm dying to know your story.
My story. Well, again, thank you so much for having us here today. I was reflecting on it a lot actually, and I don't think I've ever considered myself a leader, which I think is the irony in all of this, especially this particular podcast. But it has always been something that I've been able to jump onto. So I guess there's an inherent need that I've always had. Grew up as basically an only child. My eldest sisters are 13 and 15 years older than me. So my growing up years were very much as a single child. So that sort of sparked that independence of, well, I need to get this done. There's no one else to do it. There's no one else to blame, really. I guess I have to do it. My pathway has also been in the dance world, and I think I've always found myself looking for different opportunities within that. It was never enough for me to follow one path. It always had to be a combination of things. So I reflect on it, I think, I don't know, was I ever a leader in that sense? And I guess that's where the definition of leader for me has really changed over the years. Is it's not necessarily this, CEO of a company that knows how to do it and knows how it works, but it's me. It's me trying to figure out what works for me to be a leader. People tend to come to me for things, and I started to realize that especially over the last probably 10 years, kind of this constant flow of friendship and other people coming to me for advice, to chat, and that is my leadership skill of being able to say, okay, let me make time for you. Let me make time to actually find out more about you and your world, and change my understanding of what a leader is. because I'm not the type of leader that necessarily is going to come up with the next Bumble and, you know, the next Tinder, the next whatever, and make that go public by the age of 31. He's incredible. But I am able to lead in my own way by bringing other people on board, by saying, okay, let's do this. Let's learn from each other and let's grow together. So that's not really my story at all, but that's kind of where I'm at right now, looking at what does a leader mean? And there's so many different definitions, and that's what kind of excites me, is that I'm able to take what it means for me and make that happen. There's a ton of best practices, but actually the best practice is what works for you and your surrounding team. And I think that's, in regards to Move the World, that's what has made it work so well, is that it's not a hierarchy system. It's everybody in the pot together.
Everybody in the pot together. That is brilliant, you know, and it fits with your story, and your outlook of leadership fits with my definition of leadership, which is the ability to direct your gift towards the service of your world. Directing whatever you can do towards the service of others. And Claire, I know you are a people person, and that just fits into this definition. It's brilliant. Leadership is not a position. No, there are so many top people and who are not leaders. They are just managing. You know, they are not leaders. So
Amen.
I totally love that. So let's stick with you, Claire. To the moment now, what is your big leadership lesson, or what are your big leadership lessons?
I think when I was thinking about this question beforehand, and I think it's listening to others. There's a book that I still really resonate a lot with, called Legacy, and I can't for the life of me remember who it's by, but I'll find out for you. Thank you.
The rugby, the rugby New Zealand All Blacks book.
All Blacks.
Okay.
I'm not really one for reading leadership books and how-tos. I need a story for me to really engage. And that for me was a nice balance between kind of the best practice areas, but actually saying a story. And the biggest thing for me as a life lesson and leadership lesson was the sweeping out the shed, which he talks about, that his team is the All Blacks. Now they're making hundreds of thousands, millions a year, and they are still required to sweep out their game room. It's not done by the staff at that particular venue. It's them. And for me, that is kind of my biggest lesson of, you got to get your hands dirty. There's never a chance as a leader to say, I mean, there is chances.
I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, there's definitely chances, but that's not for me what leadership is to say, oh, I don't do that anymore. I don't need to. And I guess that's the difference, is there's a stage where we do have to go through, I don't do that anymore, because I have a team that is able to do that, and I need to ensure that they are do it. And I don't need to do that anymore, which is the difference of saying, I don't need to clean out the shed because I'm CEO, so I just don't need to. So I think that for me, that's been my biggest lesson, is being able to listen to others and take that on board with me, and say that I'm a part of the team and not the other entity of the team.
Love
my
it.
little lesson.
I love it.
Big lesson.
Listen, get your hands dirty. I mean, when you were speaking, I was just thinking of some of the leaders I admire. Mahatma Gandhi was a guy on the grassroots, got his hands and legs dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, you can mention the names. These were leaders that were in close touch with the people. I love it.
Yeah.
Megan, can we come to you? What's
Yeah.
your big leadership lesson?
Found this question really hard because there's so many. So I can't really answer in like my one big leadership lesson. But things that came to me kind of when I was thinking about it. one of them is kind of taking responsibility. So I think when you're in a position where people view you as a leader, you, whether you like it or not, you then have responsibility for others, kind of for your actions, for kind of the way in which you do things. And so sometimes that can feel a bit of a burden. You know, it can feel quite heavy sometimes, especially when there's people's livelihoods that you're, directly kind of holding. And so I think for me, it's just kind of owning the power that you have as a leader and kind of being responsible with it. So one of the things I used to do a lot was kind of have really, really big ideas. And then my way of working is wanting things to action things really quickly. And because of the skill set that I have, I'm quite a productive person. I make things happen very quickly. And I used to alienate people because maybe they didn't understand my idea enough, or they weren't able to kind of keep up with the pace in which I wanted things to happen. And therefore, it wasn't a kind of very safe way of working. You know, things were risky in that kind of way of working. So, you know, in that kind of in line with that idea of responsibility, I think for me, it's been about slowing down, making sure that everybody's on the same kind of playing field, and then kind of working together more to kind of guide and kind of shift a group to kind of a shared outcome. And when you do something wrong, taking responsibility for it, kind of owning your part in it. And that's hard. You know, it's about being vulnerable to, you know, the people that you're working with, and kind of showing that you're human. But I think for me, that's been definitely something over the last couple of years that's worked really well for me, is actually like showing people that I'm also human, and that I'm not this kind of machine that's able to kind of make all of this stuff happen, which is definitely how people viewed me in the past. I think somebody used to refer to me as intimidating back 5-6 years ago. So yeah, showing your human side and kind of taking responsibility, and being vulnerable where you can, to kind of bring people on board. Yeah.
Wow. What I see in what you're saying is empathy, basically empathy, having, you know, that touch with the people, feeling what they feel, taking responsibility. That is some huge, you know, lesson out there. And I believe, in fact, with what we're doing here in Ghana and in Africa, with 1 billion Africa, that sense of responsibility is what keeps us going. And we truly believe that if especially young people, you know, take on this particular leadership lesson you have shared, I mean, what you shared, what Claire shared, we can really, really create change.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really wish we can keep on going on and on, but we would respect the time. And so I would move on to ask for your last words. If you have some last words, Claire, and then Megan, any last word for that youth out there in the corner listening to this?
Yeah, I guess do it.
Do it.
Do it. I think a few years ago, one of my yearly, I always kind of keep a theme of every year of that's going to be my motto, that's going to be my theme. And a couple of years ago, mine was make stuff happen. And that really carried me through. And I still reflect on that as that's what my focus was. I wasn't worried too much on, well, I was obviously, everything happens in life that it gets thrown at you, but actually what I could really calm myself with was, I'm going to make something happen out of this. I'm going to take that. And this year, my theme is moment by moment, because that's what I feel is the only thing I have control over. I don't have control over my entire day, but I do have control over each moment that I create. So for the youth that is sitting in the corner listening to this, take it. The world is massive, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming.
Wow, that's very inspiring. That's very inspiring. Moment by moment. I love your theme for the year.
I know, it's a good idea,
Take it.
Yes. Meg.
I wish I had something as glamorous to say, but I would probably just say that in everything there's a lesson. So, you know, I feel like often we're given praise and recognition for the things that we do well and that we're successful in. But actually, if I look back over the last 10 years, the things that I've probably grown the most from or learned the most from have been the kind of periods of time where it's felt the hardest. You know, whether there's been conflict or whether there's been a challenge that we've had to face, or where I've felt my leadership is kind of challenged, is probably where I've learned and grown the most. So, when times get tough, keep going is probably my and not just keep going, but learn from what the experience that you're going through, so that you can kind of adapt and become a better person, a better leader. Yeah.
Okay, so we live in the moment, and then we learn from each moment. Whether something goes bad, whether something goes wrong, we pick a lesson from there. And I guess that's how we become, better people, and we grow more and more.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, you both. I have totally loved this. I really appreciate you being on the show today. And I certainly know that these leadership lessons you have shared is going to, touch someone's life to do more out there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having
me. Thank you, Prince.